Alright. How's it going, everyone? Carpo here with another video. I'm sitting in a somewhat dark room. Maybe not dark enough, actually. I just thought that maybe I'd lend just a kind of a different quality to the video today. Didn't really feel like sitting in a brightly lit room, but a little bit of ambiance never hurts. Candles are a little bit helpful. I'm probably going to take a few bong hits while I'm making this video. So if you're offended by that, be aware. I suppose I should mention that because anyone who may have children in the room, you know, the chances are there. At least just giving you a fair warning. And this video is going to be about insecurity. I kind of had a false start on this video where I got like half a minute in and started it over a couple times, and I figured it'll be one of those videos that I really want to be settled in and comfortable, make sure I'm not going to be bothered, but who knows, anything could happen. I may get interrupted anytime. As I made a video the other day where I talked about a few things regarding our lives and sharing our lives, and then I also mentioned someone else who had made a video. And anyway, it was Aron Goch, and I want to recommend him for anybody who enjoys my rambles, I guess I would say. And for anybody who's interested in the philosophies of life and thinking about things like this, Aron is wonderful at explaining himself and expressing himself and being fair about who he is. I think there's one thing for me about listening to people speak and listening to people make videos. It's when they cut out too many of their thoughts and then tend to ramble about things that don't seem serious, where they don't feel honest or seem honest about their feelings on the subject, or people who try to keep themselves distant from their feelings. And personally, I very much, I don't know, I guess I see that we all are kind of insecure about our feelings, and that's really what this video is about, is insecurities. And he made a video today which was kind of a part 2 of his insecurities video, and he talked about parents and how our parents' expectations can kind of form who we are sometimes. And I didn't really have that in my life personally. My parents, my father died when I was about 15, but neither one of my parents ever really, they always gave me, let's just say I got a pat on the back, They loved me as their son and said, hey, do what you're going to do, and that's what I've done. But it really wasn't an issue as to whether or not I went to college, and Aron mentioned in his video that his father said that education is number one. It was his thing. He expected him to go to college and get good grades and straight A's, and how much that can affect a person by the way that their parents expect from them when they're young, and trying to shake that when you get older. You can in a way feel unworthy, and I have that in my own life only on certain aspects. You see, the thing is, ego is a tough cookie. It's it's something that we need to survive. We have to have some ego, and without getting into too much detail, you have to have a sense of self. And I won't break it down into the Freudian concept of ego. It's irrelevant. Let's just think of ego as who you are, and you can let that ego rule your life, and sometimes that ego becomes someone else, or people wish they were someone else or pretend to be someone else. But often our ego jumps forward when we haven't done things, or when we have a fear of doing or being something, or if we're called out on some aspect of ourselves, we become hostile if it's something that we realize might be true. And being insecure in many aspects would be I want to take a hit first. And the reason I'm taking toke is because I feel awkward doing it while I'm making a video. Even in the past when I made videos about cannabis, and I used to have a YouTube channel just for cannabis, and I still do, but I don't use it anymore. I was not really, you know, when I was into it, I was into it, and when I wasn't, but it was about the growing aspect of it, and learning and cultivating. As for the smoking part, I never really thought of it as a cool guy thing, you know what I mean? It's kind of frowned upon almost by, you know, my inner self, understanding that cannabis isn't something that's wonderful to celebrate. I think it's great for what it does, but I still feel a little bit self-conscious smoking on camera, and it's kind of a weird thing. Probably because of the stigma attached to it, and knowing that some people will judge, and that's okay, because that's part of what I'm trying to convey here in this video, is expectations and judgment, what people expect of us. If I had one subject I talked about all the time, then people who are interested in that subject would find my channel, and people who weren't wouldn't have any interest in the channel. So let's say I talked about a particular type of like hobby bicycle kit or something, or maybe kit cars, something that people are really into. People who would find that, if they're interested, they'd find it. For example, my stereo video about vintage receivers, it has more views than any of my other YouTube videos because I made it years ago, and because so many people are into stereos. It's a crappy little short video where I'm just like talking to the camera for a sec about how much I like stereos. But people are into that, so they find it. Point being that when it gets to certain subjects, people have very strong opinions about things. If I were to say, oh man, I really love stereo equipment in general, people would be like, yeah, me too. If I said I only love vintage and new stuff sucks, they'd say, oh, wait a minute, no, this is something, the capacitors get old and this and that. If I said I only like Pioneer, but Marantz sucks, then I'd have all these people saying, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. So the more detailed and specific the things that you speak about, either the more you might attract a certain kind of person. But if it's controversial, such as if I talk about politics all the time, it's going to attract a lot of heat and hatred and judgment. And so what I'm trying to convey there is that if you avoid controversy, you usually won't have issues with people. But with my channel, I've dealt with a lot of people who subscribed because they expected that I would talk about some particular subject. For example, they saw a couple of my Kratom videos and thought, oh, this guy talks about Kratom. And then they find the next video, here I am talking about some random off-the-wall philosophy they don't agree with. And there's always something that somebody won't agree with, and then they may judge on it. And those are the understandings that we have to have about one another, that we're all different. And when you start to reveal the way you truly feel about things, such as if I was much more political and outspoken about my beliefs and politics, people would get more and more frustrated about it because they don't want to hear that. Like, if they want to hear politics, they'll go to a political channel or the news or, you know, somewhere else that's biased. So in that way, it's only necessary for me when I feel it's an important issue, like for what's going on, you know, say this next weekend is like the March for Science. And I see what's going on in, you know, say the political elite, you know, they believe there's science is garbage, you know, no reason to fund anything, no reason to give a damn about the future or technology or improving or cleaning up the environment. So if I feel strong about that, I might make a video talking about it. But it's not just for the sake of controversy, but because that's what I feel is important. My point there is that people become insecure about some of these things, and they're afraid to talk about them. So if a subject comes up at work and a person feels a certain way about something and everyone else feels differently, the person may not speak up because they feel like they might be judged. And so they avoid controversy in that way. Sometimes we don't even know, you know, like, we have to tame our egos. We have to know what we really want out of life and what we don't want. And that's a tough one. We have, I think that the most important thing is bonding with people and love. and it's one of those cheesy love is everything type statements, but it's not something that can be taught. It's only something that can be experienced and learned on an individual basis. You can't teach anyone that love is the answer. You can say that all day long, but it means nothing to a person who's fearing for their life all the time, or lives in a bomb shelter, or has seen their parents murdered in front of them, whatever the situation may be. A lot of people have a hard time having hope, and it makes Americans such as me, if I speak about certain issues, someone from other countries, I've had people say things like, oh, you Americans, you don't know what it's like to suffer, everything's great for you, you have money, you guys are rich, whatever. Individual pain is everywhere. It has nothing to do with your income, but it definitely does help to live in a country that has somewhat freedom, where I can speak about the things that I want. And I totally agree with that. But life is tough for everyone. One of the hardest things for us all, I think, is classism. And, like I heard someone say the other day, people will intermingle with classes, but you'll rarely see a guy with baggy pants down to his ankles with his boxers hanging out sitting next to a guy with golfing pants and a polo shirt having a deep conversation, because they're different types of people from different classes, different lifestyles. And that was an extreme judgment call, because of course there's some people that may dress both of those ways that are very similar in interests or get along well. But the point is that it's not the norm, that we do tend to hang with our classes, and therefore that dictates kind of how we dress and what we do. Such as the type of garb I wear. I wear all kinds of strange outfits, and I do it because I love interesting clothes, I guess. I've had many years where I was just plain, just regular t-shirts and jeans or pants, and then there's little eccentric moments, but I've decided in my life I'd rather express my funkiness, let my freak flag fly, so to speak, than kind of repress my own inner self. But there's an insecurity that comes with that too, such as like the other night when I went to this event down the rabbit hole. It's basically a celebration of psychedelic culture in a way. And there's an after party after 2 a.m. when it ends, and it was at the Crystal Ballroom, and we had a great time. My wife and I went, danced the night away, and then halfway to the after party, we kind of like stopped at the car to get some nitrous, and ended up just kind of sitting there for like an hour, and we were still kind of in our zone, but we headed on down to the after party, which we found out was just a block away. And I walked in there and I was like, oh, whoa. It was like, the DJ was bumping the tunes, there was couches, there was beds, there was water, and the whole scene was very, let's just say, people in those events don't hold back. You had to sign a waiver at the door to get into that party. And dildos all over the counter. And a lot of people would walk in there in a place like that and be extremely uncomfortable and instantly want to leave. And that's because our culture has raised us to be fearful of sex, and that's an insecurity that I understand why people have it, because the fear of performance, or the fear of talking about it in American culture, let's say. People like the French have always joked about how Americans are so prude, and it wasn't until recent years where I really started to see how bad it really was. And so on the flip side, our repressed sexual urges have caused things like the internet to be flooded with porn. Porn was like the main thing that's exchanged on the internet. The dark net is loaded with porn. And people would not believe me if I tell them that I'm like one of the only guys that doesn't have any porn on my browser, that I don't read or watch porn. It's just not a thing of mine. When I was a kid, I loved digging in the recycle bins to get like leftover Playboys, and we found a couple VHS tapes like on the side of the road, but I've never actually rented or bought any porn, because it's just not my thing. But the fact that it's so prevalent everywhere is not there's nothing wrong with it. It's the fact that we make it seem bad. I shouldn't even get into the porn discussion, because it's people have strongly mixed feelings about it. I don't believe in I don't believe that it's an issue that shouldn't be talked about, and that's because this video is about insecurities, and perhaps I've never even talked about it because maybe I'm insecure talking about it. And that's something I can honestly say that I realize there's nothing taboo to talk about. It's very important to be that way, to realize that. Now, to give you an example, there are some subjects, like, I'm sitting here taking bong hits. I live in a state where cannabis is legal, and even before it was, I still didn't feel guilty smoking it because I know that it's a great herb that I really enjoy. From another person's standpoint, it's a horrible drug. Oh my God, you're killing yourself, you're destroying your lungs, or your brain, killing your brain cells, which is all nonsense. But it's what we were raised to believe, at least our parents were. And, but on the other hand, if I was sitting here in front of you smoking crack, it would be a completely different story. People would be going nuts. They'd be like, oh my God, you're smoking crack, that's horrible, that shit'll kill you, hey man, you shouldn't get addicted, you know, that stuff. Because people know how dangerous it is and how useless it is. You know, whereas cannabis can help you relieve certain symptoms of anxiety and is very mildly addictive. I smoked for like 23 years and then had to quit for 2 years for probation. I just quit cold turkey one day and I felt a little bit, kind of like, I'd like to smoke a bowl for a couple days, but there were no withdrawals. I was just kept doing what I was doing. There's a lot of mental, psychological issue to it, but you stop smoking crack, it's a completely different story. So the addictive potential of things, and when you compare drugs, that can show you why certain things are acceptable. Well, I'm using that as a comparison, kind of a metaphor, where talking about certain subjects is like the mild subject, you know, that where it's a little bit of controversy, but generally you know it's okay to talk about it. And then some things that you just don't talk about. And there are several subjects that people don't talk about. And a lot of them for good reason, but I don't know, it comes to the idea that maybe we're insecure about certain aspects of ourselves. You know, I'm very grateful that I am developing a sense of security in knowing who I am. But I can't deny that that's partially reflected through the people who give me feedback. You know, if I was making videos like this and every single person said, man, you know, you're a complete moron, you have no idea what you're talking about, and that went on for years, I'd get the point that I was a fucking moron and I'd try to figure out what I was doing wrong. But as long as a few people are maybe inspired, and then I'm inspired by other people in turn, then we're all sharing our stories together, and those are what's really important, is the stories. You know, my friend and I split a half ounce of mushrooms last summer out in the woods. I didn't realize how much I'd eaten. I think they were golden teachers, very strong cubensis, and we just laid under the stars. I mean, I was up till dawn, just immobile, watching the stars and just a beautiful dark night sky way out in the middle of nowhere, and just had a wonderful experience with a complete loss of language. You know, mumbling gibberish to one another, laying there just laughing and really processing what mattered. And by the end of the night, we got to talking about stories and our stories and sharing one another and the ancestors and the way that our ancestors passed them down. And it was after that that I realized how important stories are and why they've always been prominent and prevalent in every single culture, so that the stories are passed down. And they don't have to be true. I mean, people laugh at these stories like, what do you mean you know, a god spit up the sun and yada yada. I mean, there are metaphors, there's reasons for this. I mean, it's pretty much guaranteed that a lot of people didn't actually believe that. That was just the way that they interpreted it so they could handle what this is. Existence. It's fucking amazing. It really is. So, you know, we have no reason to be insecure. But, on the other hand, we really have no reason to be secure either, do we? I mean, what do we really know? Well, I guess I'm running out of time. I was checking the camera. I've got about 20 minutes here. I don't know how much time I could actually even upload to YouTube, but I make a video and get across what I can in about 20 minutes. So I think I'll make another one maybe after this, but I just wanted to say that, you know, what really is important is love and bonding with each other. And it's very difficult sometimes, especially if you're on a totally different level than someone else, a friend or family, or even a foe, even someone you don't like. Because we really should relate to each other as much as we can. Those who push people away, they always will. If you have someone in your life that's constantly picking fights and looking to push you away, or, you know, causing problems, then sometimes it's a subconscious cry for help, and sometimes it's just a kind of person you just shouldn't spend time with. There are some people out there who just can't handle life. And I'd love to say that all people are great. I will say that all people have potential, but I'll also say that there are a lot of people that are total shitballs, and they just aren't worth the time of day. There's some people who would stab you in the back in a heartbeat, so you have to know the difference, and that's not being negative, that's being realistic. People can be brutal, and so I'm very cautious about who I give my heart to, you know. Even though I come and express myself online, as far as personal friends, you know, I'm pretty wary. But, you know, that's because time is precious. I have a family, I have kids, I have things to do too. But sharing with all of you and getting feedback from that is a strong driving force in making me want to grow, to see that other people are growing. And so introducing, if you have any channel recommendations to introduce me to, that would be great. Anyone who speaks with similar ideas, or not similar ideas, but in a way that they just, you know, I don't know. I don't really know how to define what I do, and without sounding like an arrogant prick. Think of Aron Goch. If you haven't heard of him, I wanted to mention that. Go to his channel. I'll try to leave it in the description if I remember. AronGoch on YouTube. Yeah, he's really from the heart, you know, and I just resonate with him a lot. And you know, it'd be great to do maybe a show down the road with a few YouTubers that have those similar feelings to express. So take care, my friends, and I will talk to y'all later. Probably sooner than you want, as my